Because, girl, being curvy does not exclude you from designer ready to wear. You too can indulge. Let's talk about some of my favorite designers that accommodate curvier bodies. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to my channel. And if this is your first time seeing my face, I'm Tori, and this is the Chic Muse, a space where we talk all things fashion, beauty, and lifestyle. And what's lifestyle over here, you ask? Well, that's our wellness, gallivanting about town, and any other musings we fancy. As a curvy woman, I too thought that I was excluded from wearing designer ready to wear, but I started buying ready to wear via the Real Real about 2 years ago, maybe more than 2 years ago now. And I soon realized that it's not about the size, it's the fit. So in this video, I'll share some of my favorite designers that offer inclusive sizing, as well as talk through some key points to consider when determining whether or not a piece could work for your body. Diving right into my favorite designers that offer inclusive sizing, Chanel. Chanel offers sizes up to a French 50 or a US 18. This sweater is a French 48, which is a US 16. A house you already know that I love, Max Mara, offers sizes up to a US 16 and in some styles a US 18 or a 2X. Max Mara has perfected knitwear as well, so you'll find many options available for curvier bodies. Another design house that offers pretty inclusive sizing is Balmain. There are many styles that size up to a French 46, which is a US 14. Balmain also offers knits, and they also use viscose in many of their pieces, which provide significant stretch. So while the actual size may not be mid or plus, the styles can definitely accommodate curvier bodies. Similar to Max Mara, Ralph Lauren collection offers standard sizing up to a US 18. And then on a slightly lower tier, you have Lafayette 148, which offers inclusive sizing in some styles up to a 3X, and Marina Rinaldi, which is a diffusion line of Max Mara, which is exclusively plus size. Other designers that I personally own that I found can accommodate curvier bodies include Bottega Vaneta, particularly, again, knitwear. There are also plenty of pieces that Bottega intentionally creates that are oversized. Zimmermann is a brand that offers boho and almost ethereal type styles, so you're getting a lot of flowiness. But they also make a lot of pieces that tend to be oversized that are able to accommodate curvier bodies. Hermes is another design house that offers pieces that can accommodate curvier bodies. Again, knitwear. They also offer a lot of straight, oversized, boxy cut silhouettes, which will be perfect for fitting curvier bodies. Loewe, knitwear, and again, oversized silhouettes. And Khaite, I have a couple of the scarlet sweaters. And again, anything knit, it can stretch a little bit while still maintaining its shape. And Khaite also makes plenty of styles that are oversized. And not just modern styles either. There are plenty of vintage designs that can accommodate curvier bodies, particularly the knitwear and I would say outerwear and blazers. So for example, I have plenty of vintage YSL from cardigans and other knitwear to blazers because in like the 80s and early 90s, blazers were cut just a little bigger than typically they are today, particularly in the shoulders. So having more space in the shoulders generally offers a bit more space in the bust area. Now, some of my blazers, I can't button them, but they definitely sit well on my body open and they don't look like they're too small. They just look like I don't have them buttoned. So regardless whether or not a design house specifically creates pieces for curvier bodies or has inclusive sizing, there are so many things to consider to determine whether or not a piece could work for you or if a design house could work for you. There is no design house that is excluded from my wardrobe. I will look at any design house and find something that can work for my body because I'm looking for these key things. First, I'm checking the size charts. Some designers or some design houses or some luxury retailers offer the measurements in their size charts. Measurements are the most important thing. You first of all have to know your own measurements, particularly your bust, waist, and hip measurements. And I'll absolutely make a video on how to take your own measurements. But you cannot do this without having your measurements, especially if you're shopping online. If you're going to a store and you don't necessarily know your measurements, you can just try things on. But knowing your measurements is paramount in determining whether or not something could work for you. So always check the size charts and the measurements. Another thing to note is that sometimes size charts will include suggested body measurements for that item. We don't care about that. You want to know the actual garment measurements. So for example, Ralph Lauren does this. They'll include both the body measurements of what they think a person would have to fit that size, and they also include the actual measurements of the garment. You want to see the actual measurements of the garment. My Teresa, Net-a-Porter, and sometimes the Real Real, but the Real Real can get real iffy with their measurements, offer measurements of pieces. That's what you want to see. You want to see what are the actual bust, waist, and hip measurements. They'll also offer the length of the sleeves, and the shoulder measurement. That's what you want to know to determine whether something will work for you. I would also suggest prioritizing knits. So for those design houses that do not offer inclusive sizing, knitwear is absolutely an access point. And while I do say prioritize knits, what's also important is knowing and understanding the fabric composition. It's super important to know how fabrics feel and perform. One thing to look for is elastane. And then if you are shopping vintage, you might see it as lycra. This essentially is just a fabric that offers stretch. It offers stretch to whatever is being blended with. So whether it's wool, it could be viscose, which is a semi-synthetic, it could be silk. The elastane or the lycra will offer some stretch. So even if something is not knitted and it's woven, if there is some stretch in it, if it has a stretch material blended, it could work for you. Again, you would want to look at the percentage of the stretch material, so whether it's elastane or lycra, and that gives you a bit of an idea of how much it could stretch. So I would say 1% is going to give you just a bit of stretch. That's going to make it comfortable, like when you sit down. If you're in like 3 and 4% stretch, that's going to allow you to pull it up over your bum if you have, a larger hip area. If it's more than 5%, that means you might even be able to size down, but it's definitely going to allow you to get comfortably in that piece and sit down and move comfortably. So even if something isn't knitted, always, no matter what, always check the fabric composition. And even if something isn't knitted, check and see if there's a stretch fabric that's blended in, because that will give you more information on whether or not it could work for you. I would say about 1 up to 5% is maybe most ideal. Anything more than that, you have to consider longevity and how you care for that garment, because more elastane could wear the item more quickly. If you're looking at an item and it is 100% wool, you really have to zoom in on the garment to see, is it a knit or is it woven? Woven wool pieces will not have stretch. It will just be like cotton, like a pair of denim. So a skirt, for example, that is woven will not stretch like a knit wool skirt or dress, even if it doesn't have elastane in it. Again, wool, when it's knitted, or any natural fiber, will have a bit of give, and it'll stretch just a little bit. And again, rib knits particularly will have an even more substantial stretch because of the construction of the garment. You can think of rib knits as kind of like an accordion, so they will just stretch out more. You still want to be considerate of how much is stretching, or how much your body is stretching the garment, because you don't want it to stretch so much that it starts to look distorted and then you can see through it. So take care to notice woven garments like skirts and dresses, because those won't give you the give that a knit will. Also, for a while, the trend was oversized, and we're still seeing that. I don't necessarily think it's a trend anymore. It's just a silhouette that many of the design houses have picked up. So things that have a more boxy cut, particularly pieces that are menswear inspired, they're going to give you a bit more room in that bust and waist area. So if you are rectangle shaped or apple shaped, those types of silhouettes could absolutely work for you. You can create your own shape with, for instance, a blazer by belting it, or with a top by giving it a tuck. Typically, you'll find oversized pieces again with blazers, outerwear, sweaters, so like cropped boxy sweaters, even blouses. So there may be button ups that are oversized, especially like cotton button ups, and then like shirt dresses or tent dresses. Another type of construction to look for oversized garments is raglan shoulders. So that's essentially where there's no seam right here. So So with a raglan sleeve, there's no seam right here. So you don't have that limitation if you have larger arms, like I have larger arms. So raglan sleeves are absolutely accommodating for curvier bodies. Now onto vintage. You can find some incredible vintage pieces. And while vintage pieces traditionally were cut much smaller than modern pieces, there are some, just because of the style of the time, particularly like 80s, early 90s, where strong broad shoulders were the trends. You can find plenty of vintage blazers that are accommodating for curvier bodies because there's just more space in the shoulders, which consequently will typically provide more space in the bust area. Now, a lot of blazers have that kind of inverted triangle look where they are broader in the shoulder, but then they taper in at the waist and hip, but then they taper in at the waist and hip. So if you are pear or hourglass shape, you want to be mindful of what those measurements are of the waist and the hip measurement. I've been able to find some incredible vintage pieces, vintage Chanel, vintage YSL, vintage Escada, etc. And I just am mindful of I'm just mindful of the length of the blazer so that I can determine where it will fall on my hips. If it's too long and it'll fall over my butt, I know that may not work. It's gonna leave too much of a gap between the front of the jacket or the front of the blazer. But if it's a shorter fit that and it sits like either right at my hips or above my hips, I know that they will work for me. But in vintage styles as well, you will find tent dresses, which are smaller at the bust area and they flare out all the way to the hip or all the way to the hem. Those are dresses that you can create shape with by belting. Also in coats with the swing style. So those again are slightly smaller in the bust and then they taper out, almost ballooning out through the hem. So, and as it sounds, if you swing your hips, the jacket or the coat will swing with you. And again, what's most important when shopping designer ready to wear is knowing your shape and knowing your measurements. It's always fit over size. We don't care what the size tag says. We don't care. We want to know how it fits. So we need to know the measurements. And in order to know whether or not the measurements will work, we need to know our own measurements. So as I said earlier, I started shopping ready to wear via the Real Real, and I got so excited because this was over 2 years ago when I was much larger than what I am now, and I realized, wait, I can get into this? Yes, I can. Yes, I can. And now I am about, I don't know, I'm somewhere between a 14 and an 18. I typically have been wearing a size 16, but I think I'm sizing down a little bit more into a 14. But from a luxury designer perspective, I'm at the highest of the size range at about the 16-ish. But again, depending on the fabric composition and the construction, I'm about a large in knitwear pieces, and in woven pieces, I am at about a 16, 18. But again, it's all about the construction. Is it intentionally oversized? If so, I can either get my normal size or I may even be able to size down. Or if it's a straighter cut, that may not work for me at all because it won't be able to accommodate my actual curves. So I invite you to peruse the resale market, get on the Real, check out the ready to wear. There is so much available. Check out the Real, Grailed, Poshmark, eBay. Look at some vintage pieces. The world is your oyster, babe. The world is yours. Go out there. You deserve to be a designer. Drip yourself in some designer. And just know you are not excluded. There's a lot of rhetoric here that will lead you to believe that just because you're existing in a curvier body, that means that you are not included. And while sure, it's not intentional inclusion, but you don't need to ask permission. Go get what you want. If you want to wear that Balmain dress, go get that Balmain dress. If you want to get that Chanel sweater or that Chanel jacket, go get it. Anyway, I hope this encourages you to branch out into designer ready to wear because you deserve. If that's what you want, you should have it. And again, take the resale route. I can definitely make a video talking about those designers that have very low resale value, so you can get them very, very cheap on the resale market. Girl, I could talk about this forever. I could talk about this for days, literal days. Okay, my closet is probably about, at this point, it's got to be at least 30% designer. Speaking of, I have to finish my indexing because I downloaded the index app. I started indexing my wardrobe. I have a long way to go. I got a long way to go. But as soon as I finish that, I'll know for sure what percentage of my closet is designer. I, at this point, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that. No, it's another video coming soon about that. Okay. But anyway, I hope that this has encouraged you to look into designer ready to wear. If that's something that, obviously, if you're here, you're for sure interested in fashion and you're likely interested in luxury and designer. So I invite you to go ahead and take a gander. Go take a gander. Find some pieces. Because you too, babe, you can enjoy, you can indulge. Maybe not too, don't indulge, don't overindulge. I can't tell you what to do. You grown. You do what makes you feel your best, okay? And if you already own some designer ready to wear, tell me what's your favorite designer? What's your favorite piece? Or come on, tell me your story. I want to hear all about it. And soon I'll be uploading a video showing you the runway designer pieces that I own. So stay tuned for that. And if you're enjoying it here and you enjoyed this video, I invite you to stay. Go ahead and subscribe. And be sure to click the notification bell so you're never late to an upload. Thank you again for stopping by and spending some time with me, and I'll see you in the next video.